Okay, so we've showed off some different herbicide programs in corn, soybean, and dry bean here during the course of this video today. So we should wrap this up into some overall management consideration points for Palmer Amaranth. And so we had a video where we talked about the state of the union of Palmer and how we can import it. So obviously step one would be exclusion, or keeping Palmer Amaranth out of your field or out of your operation. Step two, I think, is proper scouting. If you don't have Palmer, same thing for those without water hemp. You see that pigweed that looks a little bit different. If there's just a couple of them, go into the field and hand weed those is our recommendation, because they produce a lot of seed and can become a field-wide problem in quite a hurry. But if we get to a situation where we do have to use herbicides to manage these pigweeds, that's where we need to think about how we want to best utilize those herbicides. And I don't care which crop we're in, it starts with a good pre-emergence herbicide program. Ideally, if you can, I like at least 2. If you can, give me 3 or even 4 effective active ingredients in that pre-emergence herbicide program, because especially when you deal with a population like the one we're dealing with in this field, metabolic resistance, at least 5 different sites of action of resistance. Once those plants are out of the ground, they just become more difficult to control. And so that's why we need to have those effective active ingredients at planting pre-emergence, layer on more residual herbicide with our post-emergence pass, and I think we need to plan that 3 to 4 weeks after that pre-emergence herbicide application, in case that pre-emergence herbicide has some escapes, to catch those plants when they're 1 to 2 inches, because once we're over 3 inches, that's when we really start seeing failure of different herbicide programs. I think once you do have an established population, we also do need to seriously consider our cropping sequence. So we have plenty of options that we've shown in corn and soybean. We just have to have varying levels of success of making sure we get the right programs out there and the timing right. We'll get into crops like dry beans, and there we're really limited to 1 active ingredient that we can use post-emergence. And we have to be very timely with that, and also hope we don't have resistance, which in this case, on this population, we don't. We might get into some other crops, some other minor crops, field peas, chickpeas, lentils. Those are the ones that give us a little bit more concern, because yes, we have some pre-emergence options, not quite as many as corn, soybean, even dry bean to an extent, but we don't have that post-emergence option to clean up any escapes from that pre-emergence herbicide program. So once we start getting into dealing with water hemp and Palmer Amaranth on a more regular basis, if and when we get there, that's when we really need to pay attention to our cropping sequence, because some crops are just a no-win situation if we're trying to use chemistry alone to control these weeds. And so that's what I think we really need to take into consideration, is the cropping sequence also across our entire farming operation, and then make sure we do have the tools that we need to control these weeds in the crops we're trying to grow. And if we have a cropping system or a crop itself that we don't have post-emergence options, we might want to consider rotating away for a couple years from that crop on our problematic fields. So the good news I haven't talked about to date, we talk about it plenty during the winter at least, is that viability on Palmer and water hemp seed drops off dramatically after about 3 years. So we can get a problem in a hurry because of seed production, but if we do a very good job cleaning up escapes over a couple years in a row, we can also drive down a population quite quickly as well, get it more manageable, where we can maybe just go in and hand weed a few escapes in a given year. So those are some overall tips for management across cropping sequences, maybe highlighting some crops if we're just talking pure chemistry, that we have some better and more effective options, but it really comes down to being timely and using multiple effective active ingredients no matter what crop we're in, and hopefully that'll get us to harvest and get some clean fields to harvest, and year in and year out be able to try and stay ahead of this battle against Palmer Amaranth and water hemp.